Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Global Situation Space. My name is Macarena Torres, and I am the head of the Trade Facilitation team here at the World Economic Forum, as well as the Deputy Director for the Global Alliance for Trade Facilitation, an initiative that supports the movement of goods across borders. We are here to have a very fantastic discussion about the movement of humanitarian goods and the support and the role that trade plays into that. And we have two fantastic speakers for this discussion. As a start, we have the Secretary General Ian Saunders from the World Customs Organization, and then it will be closely followed by the Minister for Foreign Trade and Development, Minister Tavio, from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Finland. Secretary General, please. Thank you.
For the opportunity to be here and to offer a customs perspective on this important topic. You may be wondering, what does customs have to do with humanitarian assistance? And the short answer is, it has a lot to do with humanitarian assistance. It does because whenever assistance comes from another country and has to cross a border, customs is present. And where customs is present, it performs three functions. It collects appropriate revenue, it facilitates legitimate trade, and it prevents the entry of harmful and illegal goods. So if we're looking at a humanitarian crisis where medicines need to arrive in country, customs is responsible for making decisions regarding the entry of those, but customs, when doing its job well, also coordinates with the health ministry that wants to know how many vaccines they're entering, what quality are they from, how are they provided, and where are they moving so they can later be administered within the country. If we're looking at construction equipment in the context of a natural disaster, moving that across borders very quickly is also within the remit of customs. But in saying this and sharing what customs does, part of the message for me this morning to share with you is that technology is an important enabler for what customs does. The volumes that cross borders every day, not just during crisis situations, but the amounts that cross the borders every day, can only do so with technology enabling the decision-making by customs. We're talking about digital solutions that allow customs to collect data about incoming shipments in order to make determinations about what should enter and what poses what level of risk. We're talking about non-intrusive inspection equipment so that when there's a shipment that we think may have some risk or introduces an anomaly, we have the ability to check that shipment quickly as opposed to devanning or unloading a 40-foot container. We can do it much more quickly with the assistance of non-intrusive inspection technology. But also underpinning the use of this technology is the use of data. And part of what the WCO does is it's developed what's called the data model. It's the common language of data elements and messages that allow the trade community, government authorities, including customs, and others to interact with one another so there is no misunderstanding about what's in a shipment. The information that's needed to enable a border-related decision is all there, and there's consistent treatment across many customs administrations, every customs administration that's implemented the WCO data model. But talking about humanitarian crises is only one piece of the puzzle, because the investments in process, the investments in infrastructure, the investment in information are what enable trade every day. So while a humanitarian crisis presents an external time pressure, a certain sensitivity because there may be lives and livelihoods at stake, the fact of the matter is the management of trade every day relies on this technology, these processes, this information that enable customs to make informed decisions at the border. So it's collecting the appropriate revenue, it's facilitating the trade that warrants facilitation, and it's preventing the entry of dangerous and illegal goods. That's really the contribution that customs makes to this. It's something that the World Customs Organization and its 186 members are committed to. Another part that we are focused on is the use of partnerships, because customs cannot make these determinations alone. There are other agencies, health ministries that I mentioned, environmental agencies, other agencies with border-related competence that have to contribute to the decision and have to contribute quickly if what you see as the trade community is a quick release of a shipment. But we also communicate closely with the private sector, knowing who the partners are in the private sector, understanding what risk they pose and mitigating that risk also allows us to facilitate their shipments. So what does customs have to do with delivering for people? It has to do quite a bit, not just during emergencies, but every day. We're collecting the revenue, we're facilitating trade, we're protecting society, and we're using technology, processes, and partnerships as the enablers to fulfill those missions. Thanks very much for the opportunity to be here, and I'd love to pass the word on to Minister Tavio to offer us a perspective from the trade.
Okay, thank you for the insightful intervention, General Secretary Saunders. We appreciate the close collaboration between the World Customs Organization and the Finnish Customs. And listening to you, it really concretizes how vital the role of customs is, especially in times of crises and times that we are now facing. Ladies and gentlemen, Finland is an open economy and highly integrated in the global economy and therefore dependent on trade both on imports and exports. When thinking about crisis preparedness, we also think of securing our ability to trade in all circumstances. It's our aim to ensure the supply of critical goods and services even at time of crisis. Part of the work is done within the context of European Union as well as NATO. Improving resilience at home and abroad is at the forefront of their agendas. We contribute to their work actively as together we are stronger. When thinking of critical supplies at times of crisis, one tends to think of food, water and medical supplies. But we also need to think about the functioning of communications, financial services or other critical services in various fields. For example, Russia's war of aggression has caused significant damage to Ukraine's telecom and energy infrastructure. Thousands of base stations and tens of thousands of fiber optic lines have been lost. Russia has also launched devastating attacks on Ukraine's electricity production plants and grid. This has affected the supply of power. Ukraine has to restore and strengthen their communication links to keep their economy online. Our companies like Nokia have been supporting Ukraine in these efforts. We believe modern digital networks make Ukraine more resilient. They also support a productivity leap in sectors such as energy, manufacturing and transport. The Ukrainian and Finnish authorities collaborate to advance digitalization and to build crisis-resilient infrastructure in Ukraine. Finland promotes private sector investments in Ukraine. The implementation is in the hands of Ukrainian and Finnish companies. They have the know-how on cutting-edge digital infrastructure and innovative technologies. Ladies and gentlemen, trade and supply chain continuity are important also for the humanitarian assistance. If, for example, Ukraine's private sector cannot source supplies from the global markets, the humanitarian needs of people may not be sufficiently satisfied. Humanitarian organizations too purchase equipment and assistant material from the private sector. If they cannot move surgical material from country to country, they cannot support local hospitals treating wounded people. Humanitarian actors also deliver cash to people so they can buy what they need for the most, and this supports local markets as well. Ladies and gentlemen, the events in recent years have made us look at supply chains and global trade in a new light. The importance of technology is greater than ever. In Finland, we make best use of the advantages of digital trade data processing. At the same time, we prepare ourselves for any electronic system disruptions. The availability of critical goods must not be hindered by any system failure. The EU is also reforming its custom practices by leveraging new technological solutions in order to facilitate trade. The Finnish businesses are driven by the ambition to provide digitalized solutions to help the various stages of trade. Their solutions help reduce waste and enable safe and efficient handling of cargo at the ports. Efficient supply chains all the way from the country of production to the retailers and the consumers improve the security of supply. Finland has a long tradition of collaboration between the public sector, private sector and the third sector in ensuring supply security at all times. There is a strong joint commitment to look after our collective security. To be even better equipped to manage risk in the future, the public and private sectors should work together to access any risk in critical supply chains. Information sharing between the two is key importance and can be very beneficial on both sides. Companies have a granular understanding of their own supply chains, while governments can collect such information from several companies to paint a full picture. Both sides have unique insights on the probability of different risk. With the help of comprehensive joint risk assessments, it is possible to design the necessary policies to manage risks. The public and private sectors should also cooperate in the designing and implementing the policy response. There are many policy tools available to manage supply chain risk, ranging from stockpiling to diversifying trade with new trade agreements. We aim to trade with as many countries as possible so that the shock due to a natural catastrophe, pandemic or other type of crisis in one part of the world would not cut us off from critical supplies. Ladies and gentlemen, the COVID-19 pandemic made some of the vulnerabilities visible, and like the rest of the world, also Finland is now better prepared should we find ourselves in crisis again. Let me highlight two lessons especially. First, the role of custom authorities is critical at time of global pandemic. Our customs proved their ability to adapt to unpredictable changes in global trade. Thanks to the situation awareness of the customs, we know how the supply chains and global logistics evolved in those circumstances. Second, the pandemic showed how important international connections between the custom authorities are. Good working relations can help to solve practical challenges. Some of the lessons learned from the pandemic are now put into use to support Ukraine. The Finnish customs do their best to facilitate the flow of critical supplies to Ukraine. Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine has security implications for Europe as a whole. We must reinvest into global security of supply in times of crisis. Finland can help other countries and businesses to ensure that they stay connected to the global economy through the seas, land, air and space with our technological solutions. Securing global interconnectivity through international and public-private cooperation is paramount for safeguarding trade flows in all circumstances. Finland and its companies are ready to do their part to prepare as well as to respond to the crisis across the globe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister, for your insights, and thank you very much, Secretary General, for your information. Maybe I just wanted to take a second, because I know we have some time to take some questions, but maybe just some sort of reflection. Secretary General, any sort of insights from the intervention from the Minister, especially when it comes to the point about the public, private, international sort of like organizations? How can we all work together and cooperate to make this flow better?
Great, thank you, Macarena. The point about public-private partnership, I can't say enough about it. When we're talking about resiliency of supply chains, when we're talking about the level of security and confidence that we can have as a customs administration about what's trying to enter the country, we need to engage with the owners of the supply chain. We need to understand and have good relationships with the logistics providers, the manufacturers, the exporters, the importers of record. Those that have knowledge and insight and have a connection to a transaction need to be engaged with us because, one, they need to understand our requirements. And two, we need to understand what level of risk they pose or not. And the lower the level of risk, the greater level of facilitation we can offer. And that's particularly important in time-sensitive situations like humanitarian crises. Another takeaway that I took from the minister's intervention was the importance of information exchange and the possibilities that exist when customs administrations work with one another. We have an initiative in the WCO called Globally Networked Customs. And what the concept involves is enabling real-time information exchange between customs administrations so that what country A knows, country B can benefit from and inform their decisions in a risk-based fashion and provide facilitation where it's due. Information exchange, customs to customs, information exchange and interactions between customs and the private sector, information exchange between customs and other government agencies. That network is all critical to making timely, reliable, and safe decisions at the border. And I was very thankful that the minister had made those points in his intervention and that Finland's experience bears out these concepts.
Secretary General, maybe now I would like to open the floor for questions. Yes, please.
Hello. Hello, I have a question for Mr. Saunders. Thank you so much for that very informative speech. I am curious to know, how do you see the evolving global trade environment impacting small and medium-sized enterprises? And what measures can governments take to support their integration into global value chains?
Great, thank you for that question. Increasing the activity of small and medium-sized enterprises is something that the World Customs Organization and its members are looking at. And one of the ways that can be most helpful is engaging these companies, making sure that we as customs are making them aware of requirements so they can move from being trade interested to trade ready. Part of that is understanding what the requirements are of being a trade actor and making sure there's transparency around that. But another tool that we have in the World Customs Organization is a concept called the authorized economic operator. An authorized economic operator is a company of various types who work with customs and with whom we have a relationship with that gives us a sense of confidence in their operations, a sense of their supply chain security, and a sense that they pose a lower risk. And where they pose a lower risk, they have less likelihood of being stopped at the border. And where they're not being stopped at the border, their costs go down. So when we talk about the limited resources of a small or medium-sized enterprise that doesn't have the resources to build a huge compliance department, making trading as easy as possible for them is what customs can do to help. And that's something that we can do with the authorized economic operator concept, making sure that the standards of those programs are set up, that they're friendlier to smaller, medium-sized enterprises that want to participate in trade, but also at a basic level, making sure that we're being transparent about what we need of trade actors so they can configure their business models and their operations to be compliant at the front end and not penalized at the back end.
Actions or any feedback you'd like to provide on that, to the question?
Well, thank you. First of all, it's very important, and I mean it's interesting to hear the customs aspect to all this. On my business, we usually more focus on the trade agreement side, but my advice to the SMEs is generally that once they are open to the globe, they usually get more diversification, and lots of people are quite afraid of the diversification of these times because there has been a problem with the Russia attacking Ukraine. So very bad example for many companies, of course, losing investments in Russia. So now they're a little bit worried whether they'll make new investments. So I tell usually to them that this is also diversification of their trade and their supply chains. It's a shared risk, so less risk, obviously. So this is my input to this, and I always encourage companies to work more globally. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I see we have another question over there, please.
Yeah, I just so I have a question for each of the panelists, just on for Mr. Saunders. So you talk about like country A or country B benefiting from what country A knows, and so moving information across borders. What are the things that are slowing that down or snarling those information flows up? Is it technology? Is it regulation? What are some things that we need to think about? Some barriers we need to think about removing in order to make that information flow more easily? I'd just be really interested. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. There are a number of things that slow down customs to customs information exchange. Part of it is having similarity in data sets. And that's something that the WCO data model actually provides. That common language, so we are using the same data elements, we're using them the same way, so that we genuinely understand the information because there's no disconnect in what we're collecting and what we're sharing with one another. So implementation of things like the WCO data model would move us closer to having that fungibility of data that gives common understanding and ability to use information effectively. Hard technology is another one of the barriers because not every customs administration has the automated capability to collect, retain, and push the information to a partner. So having not equivalent infrastructures, but similar enough infrastructures to allow the electronic exchange is one of the barriers. But apart from those technology-related issues, one of the critical issues is trust and making sure that when we're exchanging it, we're comfortable in how the Customs Administration we're providing the information is going to handle it. We want to make sure that that environment is safe. That information is not public for a reason, and we want to make sure that when that information is exchanged, it's used appropriately. Some of that comes from experience, and where there's good experience, success begets success. But the trust barrier is one of the things that we will need to look at, and related to that, legal requirements to make sure that everyone has a common understanding of what the level of protection is between the Customs Administration that provides the information and that administration that receives it. We have to resolve those things, develop a common understanding, common trust, and enabling infrastructure. If we do those things, we'll get a lot closer to a more effective customs-to-customs information exchange.
Question for the Finnish minister. We were talking before, and you said, over 50% of the EU's land border with Russia is Finland, right? And so I was just wondering if there are any kind of lessons that we've learned from the last 2 years in terms of using technologies, and if not technologies, then using process kind of refinements and iterations to better manage a border where sanctions are in place, and to distinguish between essential goods that can cross and those that cannot without having to actually open up every container. Are there any lessons learned from administering this sanctioned border? Thank you, Minister.
Well, that's a tough question because of course now we had big problems with circumvention of the sanctions, which we always put a lot of force into, and to be honest, there's it's a most matter of the truck traffic. I don't think so much of the maybe train traffic because that has gone much lower after the war, but the trucks, they do cross the border from all the way in the European border, not just the Finnish border, but obviously a lot of that data that is about those goods. I mean, surveillance of that data is crucial, and knowing the companies who order the products. This has been case specifically in the goods that would go from EU to Middle Asian countries, and we do acknowledge that some of the trucks that go through Russia, they end up stopping there and then dismantling. So I think there is a problem there, but we've been active and most of all cooperating with the countries on the receiving side. But as a big picture that we are now discussing about customs today, I think because the basic functions for me, the custom, they have to they make sure that the goods entering the country are they are legal. I mean, all the legal requirements are filled, and of course the flow of illegal substances, and to detect these, we're going to need a lot of new technologies and data to prevent of those entering the country. And I think one big issue that we are going facing this year, it's going to be the huge number of small parcels coming to European Union, especially from China, but I think this might be an issue with America as well, and flow of those parcels is going to make all the time the more difficult to detect what is coming in, and because they are coming from such a wide array of companies, so difficult also to detect a specific one company. So I'm following this situation very, very carefully.
Thank you very much. Maybe, I know because we're coming at the end of the session, so thank you again so much for your time, but maybe I wanted to give you 1 or 2 minutes if you wanted to share with us some final thoughts on the discussion, especially on the technology aspect, the humanitarian aspect, and the role that trade plays. Anything else that you'd like to share? Maybe we can start with the Secretary General.
Right. Thank you, Macarena. Maybe a final point that I would offer is that with trade growing and the complexity of supply chains growing, the challenges that customs administrations face are also growing. And so being able to keep pace with the changes, the increase in complexity, the fact that the adversaries that want to misuse the system are that much smarter and that much more aggressive in their tactics, being able to keep up with this requires continued attention and continued investments. Customs needs infrastructure, it needs good processes, it needs enabling partners in the private sector and the rest of government in order to keep up with what's coming its way. Small parcels, large volumes, complex supply chains, sanctions regimes, many reasons that customs has to work hard to keep up. And so keeping our eye on the fact that the situation is changing and requires us to evolve with it, and making sure that investments keep pace with it is something that's going to continue to be a challenge for customs administrations, but also governments as a whole. Because at the end of the day, the public's expectation is that what customs allows to enter is safe and appropriate. And for us to provide that assurance, that guarantee, means we've got a lot of work to do, and hopefully we'll have the benefit of investment partners and technology to enable us to continue doing it.
Minister, any closing words?
Okay, thank you for the event. And just briefly about the humanitarian situation, it's been on my desk on recent years so many times how difficult, of course, is to deliver the humanitarian assistance to the war zones, and this has been the case recently, of course, in the Israeli-Gaza war, and those we follow. You know, we have the daily statistics. We look on the flow of trucks inside the Gaza to deliver the humanitarian aid, and I think the lesson learned from this is of course like the couple things I mentioned. It's the international cooperation of different organizations and the key actors, and also the technological the processes, data, and the possibilities to improve those processes on the flow of those deliveries. Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you all so much for participating in this session, especially to our fantastic speakers for such an enriching discussion. Thank you for participating in the Global Situation Space, and thank you all. Have a wonderful day. Thank you very much.